Hello, everyone. We are very happy to present the second event based on our book on artist Badri Narayan, which is also the first book in our series of publications called The Indian Modern. Badri, very interestingly, was both a minimalist in life and a fabulist in art. The fact that he was a born storyteller gives us a clue as to the connection between these two aspects. Um, Today, we will be walking down memory lane with four people who knew Badri on a very deep and personal level. His daughter Archana Chiplunkar and son-in-law Ravi Chiplunkar, both joining us from New Jersey. His friend and longtime associate Dadiba Pandol joining us from Mumbai. And his friend and author of the book Badri Narayan, Prema Vishwanathan, who is joining us from Bangalore. This book has been co-published by Marg and Pandol Art Gallery and is a very special project for all of us. An exploration of Badri's life and work has moved us to look at newer perspectives with relation to the art world and to examine the idea of modernity like never before. Like I mentioned, it has also inspired us to sort of come up with this series, The Indian Modern, which will explore other unique artists in the days to come. Before we start, I would like to remind you to keep your audio muted throughout. We will be having a Q&A session at the end, so leave your questions in the Q&A box. Do try to keep it as short as possible and try to name the speaker you would like the question to address to. With this, I think I'd like to hand it over to Prema. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Anjana. Hello, everyone. For Badri Narayan, painting was as natural as breathing. It was the urge to communicate that prompted him to paint. It was the urge to communicate his vision of contemporary reality using the language of the past. His vision of the urban landscape, of the man woman equation, of the callousness and compassion that human beings display towards one another and towards their environment were all part of holistic and non-hierarchical worldview. It embraced every living being and all faiths. And this vision, which is of utmost relevance in these turbulent times, was underpinned in part by his deep personal relationships. It gives me great pleasure, therefore, to engage in this freewheeling conversation with those who knew him very personally, very deeply, his daughter Archana, his son-in-law Ravi, and Dadi Ba, who was a close associate and friend. Let me start with you, Archana. Um, what was Badri like as a father? We've been talking, in previous sessions about him as an artist, but what was he like as a father?
Hello, everybody. Firstly, I just want to thank Marg, the whole team, for inviting me to be part of this panel and to share some up-close memories of my father and artist Badri Narayan. Yeah, my father, his parenting was a very gentle kind, a very caring, a suggestive kind. I remember he would never command us, like to do anything. He would hardly lose his temper. He never ever raised his voice with us. And I done very well in my matriculation exam. I remember, but he never pressured me taking up science, commerce, something that a lot of parents do. So he allowed both myself and my sister, Monisha, to follow our inclinations and interests freely. Another thing I remember about him was his very caring and compassionate nature. I remember that whenever I used to fall sick in childhood with, some respiratory infections or tonsillitis, he would willingly take me to the doctor, stand in the long line, get medicines from the pharmacy, and he would always check on me to see how I was doing. So he had a very caring disposition. When I would get up early in the morning to study for an exam, he was an early riser, so he would readily make an extra cup of tea or coffee and serve it with biscuits. So there were a lot of things like that. He was also a great cook, whipping up meals like his favorite upma or, believe it or not, even something like macaroni, which he learned to cook in a certain way, and they would be delicious. He would bring home snacks like, the potato vadas and sweets, his favorite jalebis and pedas from his local restaurant, Saroj. And I remember I would wait for it and just eagerly, devour them. So there were a lot of memories like that. Also, we went to the local market quite often together. And I remember one of the first stops usually would be at his local, the frame shop, where he would drop off a painting or two. And he would spend a lot of time with the framer, instructing him in painting, choosing the framing. So that was a kind of, he would pay meticulous attention to that. So I would also watch his storytelling sessions. He didn't really sit down with us and have a storytelling session per se at home, but I would definitely, he would share a lot of memories from his work day, whether at the international school or whether also when he was part of the Indian Film Censor Board for some years. He would share tidbits about the celebrities he met, about the movies which are going to be released, stories from his teaching day at the school. And he would also often encourage us to draw and paint. He would give us a piece of paper, some paints, and say, whatever came to mind to just sit down and draw. So those were some of my memories. Watching him paint, write, everything was an educational experience. So, yeah.
Dadima, perhaps you can sort of taking off from that. Badri had this very up-close and personal relationship with his family members, but so did he with your father, Kali, and as well as with you, right? Even though it was supposedly a business relationship, but I recall him saying that it was much more than that. There was a whole other dimension to that relationship. Could you sort of shed some light on that, please?
Sure, Prema. So to begin with, Archana sort of told me something I never knew about him cooking. This was an aspect of his that I'd never heard of from him. In fact, he always said Indra is such a good cook that I think she wouldn't allow him into the kitchen, but I'm happy to hear that he did. But the gallery's relationship with Badri that I know of started the year I joined, which was around 1980. Dad had known Badri for several years, may have dealt on off with his work, but I don't know what sparked a new relationship or a new beginning. But I remember walking into the gallery. I'd been out one afternoon and I came in early evening and I went to the storeroom and I saw these couple of pictures there, a kind of imagery which I'd never seen before. I'd seen very little art to begin with, but having gone to the gallery earlier, we had never seen a Badri Narayan exhibition. So his work was kind of fresh and very, very different than whatever I'd seen. And I came out and asked my dad, who's this artist and whose work is this? And that's when he told me a little about Badri Narayan, and his career has been divided between his teaching as well as painting. And he came in today with these works and I quite liked them, and we've kept them here on consignment. And I said, well, I quite like it. And I think that was the beginning of the relationship. And I think Dad sold those two works. It didn't take him too long selling them. And then the relationship started from there.
Wonderful. Coming back to Archana and Ravi, I think Badri touched everybody he came in touch with in a very human way. So
yeah.
System
Yes.
behind his persona, and which also sort of permeated his art. So can you sort of talk a little bit about what you imbibed from him, both in terms of the value system as well as in terms of your aesthetic sensibility?
I can go first. Ravi can, is that okay?
Yes, sure.
Regarding, he definitely passed on, my father definitely passed on a love of reading and books to me. Growing up, we were surrounded by troves of books on a variety of subjects, especially on culture, art, philosophy. We had magazines and newspapers. He had over 5,000 books in his collection. Of course, not all of it could be stored in a small two-room apartment in Chembur, Mumbai, but they were freely loaned out. He loaned out to his friends, and some were stored at his friends' places. So he would often, show us some of his favorite authors and books. So I think I definitely it built up a love of reading, and I think it subconsciously influenced my career choice as a librarian. So, which I started back in India and which I continued here in New Jersey. He was also a great lover of Indian classical music. Bhimsen Joshi, Pandit Jasraj, for instance, Kishori Amonkar, some of his favorites he would listen to on his LP collection. So I grew up listening to a lot of music, watching music concerts on television, artist Sangeet, for example, on Doordarshan. And I think that has given me definitely a year for music, which I'm very grateful for. One of his close friends was Mr. Vijay Raghav Rao, who lived in Sion. He was an eminent flutist. So we visited him and his family quite often. Here I also want to credit my mother. She was a singer for quite a few years on All India Radio before she got married. And she also had a great keen sense of music, and I have to give her credit for my love of music.
Sir, slide 10. Sorry, I'm just slide 10.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a great picture. Them together.
That is a good one. Yeah.
Great picture. The other thing we visited, as you can imagine, a lot of galleries, and exhibitions. So I continue to this day. I love visiting museums and galleries. We had, he had a lot of artist friends. For example, there was Mr. Kade, who we visited quite often, and he lived in Chembur. And there was my mother's uncle, eminent artist, Mr. K.K. Hebbar, who we visited frequently. So there was a lot of conversations he had and on art, on aesthetics. So with these, and listening in on them was definitely very educative. The other thing, I can go on, but there was also a love of movies that I think I definitely imbibed from him. We would watch a lot of movies, in theaters or on television together. So that was some of this. And also, speaking of really values, I think he symbolized through his actions, through his persona, all values like simplicity, humility. He would go around everywhere in a simple kurta or jola and sandals. He would treat everybody, whether it was from somebody from a lowly worker to a panwala, chaiwala, framewala, everybody in a friendly manner. He was very generous.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Prema.
I just want to show slide 23, which will sort of explain this.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think,
Yeah, you wanted something
he was really very comfortable with common folk. I felt he had his own special panwalas. He had his special taxi drivers who would normally be waiting on the main drag in Chembur, and from where he would either go to Dadiba's gallery or to his science studio. And I felt he treated them all so nicely and equally that they would be readily in service for him. So it was always that's one thing that I truly learned from him, how to treat everybody so nicely and equally, and how to be humble. That is something that I saw in action, in spite of having a Padma Shri given to him, Maharashtra Gaurav Puraskar, all of these wonderful things that have happened to him, and him being such a great artist. In spite of that, the humility and the equality with which he treated people was something truly amazing, and something really that I've learned from.
Yeah. And also,
Exactly.
yes, and also one other thing I think he depicted in his paintings was a kind of I would say a multi-religious sensibility, I think, which also imbibed. For instance, he depicted, through the influence of the Jataka tales, he had a Buddhist depiction, he had Jesus in his paintings, and of course he had Hindu themes, there was Ganesha, there was Diwali. So I think this was an important part of his aesthetic sensibility. We were not overly religious growing up. We didn't, visit temples that often, but we had prayers every day. So I think he showed us the value of, what's important in different religions. That definitely came through. And his childlike wonder is something I think which still stays with me, and something he retained till the very end, curious and the childlike innocence about everything around him. So plus his sense of humor. He could crack a lot of jokes, especially Sardarji jokes he was very famous for among his friends, and his love of children. Those are things I try to remember and try to remind myself these values, which are important in day-to-day living, I think.
I think he always believed he was a student all his life. So he felt there was something to
Mm.
learn from anyone and everyone. There
Correct.
was no hierarchy for him in terms of, yes, he did realize or recognize people who were wise and intelligent, but he
Yeah.
believed that there was something to learn from all walks of life. And there was huge humility to that. He would even stop a conversation with my dad or me to acknowledge one of the gallery boys who he'd seen for the first
Mm.
time that day.
Mhm.
And, you know,
Yeah.
and break
Yeah.
contact, not just stop conversation, make eye contact, raise his hand, smile, ask after him. So these were
Mm.
aspects of him. And, you know, Badri's built relationships all his life. His life was about relationships. And those extended not just to his family, but a lot more beyond that. And those relationships again reflect in his art. When you look at his art, there's a lot of empathy, like the work we're looking at right now, which is titled Hunger, if I'm not mistaken. And it's obviously something that he saw which touched him. And he felt the need to reflect it in his work. Ravi, when you first got to know him, you know, when your marriage was sort of being discussed, what
Yeah.
impression did you have of him then? What was
So
your
this is
first impression of him?
this is an interesting question, Dadiba, simply because honestly, I was not very familiar with him at all. I'm just going to be honest, right? So I was just because it was an arranged marriage, and uh, we knew their family because of my mom's work at a social organization in Sion.
Slide 15,
And
please.
I didn't know much about him, but once I got to know him, I truly enjoyed our relationship. He was just nice to everyone right from the beginning. The simplicity, right after our engagement, we came home, or a couple of days later, we was just sharing, having some nice vada pavs at there from the local stand. It was just so simple. We would just sit down on the floor and enjoy a very nice conversation, have vada pav, have chai, and it never occurred to me that this was such a great personality I was really dealing with.
And when did
Looking
you realize that? When did you understand the significance?
once I started seeing his paintings, and once I really started understanding his paintings, and after conversations with him, that I realized, wow, this is something really amazing. But as a person, he would never obviously make me realize that at all. That was just not him.
So that's a
And
lovely
yeah,
picture, Badri. Where is this?
yeah,
This is in Bangalore.
Okay.
this,
This is the
yeah,
Yeah,
Bangalore.
this
because
was our home, first
couple
home
of
in New Jersey. Yeah,
yeah, and the
and
earlier painting was also at the airport when we went to receive them when they came to. Probably the only time he has traveled out of the country when he
Yes.
came to visit us.
Yes.
First in 1997 when our son was born, and then 1999. So this was the one in the airport when we visited
yeah,
went
He
to
was
I,
very
welcome
I
them.
anxious
remember the
about this
dining table
travel.
very well because that
Yeah.
was his studio, and
Oh, yeah.
he
And
was
great
so
natural
happy.
light coming in.
Yeah, he was very happy. I think because he was not dealing with the mundane day-to-day stuff. He was away from that Bombay scene, and he was in completely different environment where he could, aram se focus on his work. I still remember going out with him to get art supplies.
Yeah.
Regrettably, I was not very happy with the quality of paper that we got here because the handmade paper that we get in India, it has that natural texture. It has that indentures, which bring out the painting in a much different way. Here they were a little on the flatter side, so I personally was not too happy with that. But he adjusted.
No,
That's
he
him.
Yes.
adjusted very well to those works.
He adjusts, and he produced really wonderful pieces. And I'm really happy seeing him work. Seeing just in that 3x6 or 4x6 dining table, the amount of beautiful art that he produced, it was just amazing. Amazing.
And did that
Yeah.
remain his sort of table right through, or every evening he would tidy it up for dinner and then set it up again the next day?
Yes.
Yes,
I
he
think
would.
so.
So normally what happened was things would happen after we have gone for work, either both me and Archana.
Yeah.
So he would probably be painting during that time. By the time I got home, there was no sign of any paint dripping or anything like that. No.
No, because I'm thinking
No.
two things here. His studio, which his friend Suresh Iyer had sort of
Uh-huh.
given him in
Yes.
Sion, whenever
Yes.
you went there, if he was not at work, it would be very neat and organized.
Yeah.
And also, you know, the practice at home where he painted in the kitchen every night after dinner and the cleaning up was
Right.
finished. So
Yeah.
he painted late at night and then had to
Yeah.
tidy up again for the next morning.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think he was
I think
constantly
that-
habituated to this.
Yes, I think because the lack of space can make you do that, Dariba. Yes.
Yeah.
That you have
He
Yeah.
never
the
took
space.
space for granted. He never took space
Yeah.
for granted,
But
which
did
is
you,
an
No,
amazing
no.
quality.
yeah, did you
Yes.
feel it was constrained though, the lack of space in Chembur, Archana?
Oh, well, growing up, you know what? It did not really hit me at the time. I mean, it was a small apartment, but we managed very well. And thanks to my mother, because she kept a very neat and very well defined and very everything in space, in its place. So,
Yeah.
not really. I used to wake up in the morning if I had to study early. Wake up and go to the kitchen and study at the kitchen table. So at that time, really, the lack of space did not hit me. But you know, because it was a very well managed space, we all adjusted. And my father, especially, because he painted on the table, and then, as we mentioned, he cleared it up, and then we used to have dinner there, or you know, so.
This was a painting that actually represented.
Oh, okay.
This is kind
Wow.
of Chembur when he first moved there. That's how
Yeah,
he
this
kind of
is
Chembur.
old Chembur. Yeah, there used to be a lot of houses
Organized
like yeah,
houses, very organically coming up, you know.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And what's
And-
interesting,
That remained with him.
right? His love of nature. Although he never
Yes.
actually stepped out much, but it comes into his paintings, the love of nature.
Yeah.
Could you say a little bit about that? I mean, how did you sort of perceive his love of nature?
I think also his philosophy that everything in life had a purpose
Yeah.
and had a role, and he
Right.
acknowledged it and observed all aspects of life. It wasn't just human beings, whether it was animals, whether it was plants. And I think he had a lot of plants at home as well, even though the house was small. There were always a
Right.
few sort of potted
Oh, yeah.
plants around.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
think for him, life was sort of far more holistic than many of us look at it. You know, we tend to bracket things. He never had that.
He had a
And he also depicted a lot of animal themes, like you know, you see the cat, there was a fish, so there was
Yeah.
life in different forms, which he constantly paid attention to, depicted.
And,
And
even
also-
mythical ones,
Animal-
like the
Yeah,
unicorn.
cool.
like the kinnaras and the
Yeah, and unicorns. Yeah,
Unicorn and the elephant, and yeah.
yeah.
This is
The
another aspect of his.
six-tusked elephant. Yeah,
Yeah, there was the six-tusked elephant, and there was the earthy elephant, earthly. So,
yeah.
That was the story of Buddha, the birth of Buddha,
yeah.
the dream,
Yeah.
Maya's
Yes.
dream. That's the sixth task. But here's a very
Yes.
interesting painting, which is his
Yes.
interest in astrology,
Yeah,
which
right.
is
Oh,
something
yeah.
few people know.
Yes.
But he
Correct.
had a very intense understanding, and in fact, even used to write on astrology at a certain
Right.
time.
Yeah.
yes, he studied it very deeply. He used to subscribe to the astrological magazine, or he used to study it very, very closely. And in fact, some people, once they came to know that he was doing it, people would come and ask, consultations with him astrologically. So,
Did
yeah,
you
but he was
girls
more.
do it for your results, for your exam results? Did you all do that? What's it looking like?
No, we just worked hard.
So
Yeah,
in fact,
no.
he had once mentioned a very interesting story to me where there were these guys from Kerala who, there's a page written on everyone's life.
Yeah,
I don't know
Nadi.
if
yeah.
anyone's heard about it.
Nadis, right.
Nadi or Patti. Yeah, they call it. Yeah.
I
Right.
don't remember the Sanskrit words he used, but it translated to your mother's name Indra and your wife's name Indra.
Yes.
So
Yes.
he said,
Yes.
when I was introduced to Indra, I straight away knew this was my wife. because this
Ah.
happened to me many years ago.
Right. So what he had said was Mata Namam Indira, Patni Namam Indira.
Correct.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, mother and wife both will be Indiras. Yes.
Yeah.
So I
Yes.
don't
He had a
think
very
he
close
was.
relationship with both. I mean, his mother was, though she died when he was just entering his teens, but
Yeah.
he had a very important role in his life. And that's why I think the woman is a very powerful figure in his paintings. You can see that,
Yeah. That
Yes.
mother and child
Mother
relationship also, I think, was really has also been reflected in a bunch of his paintings. Uh,
Yes.
and it's the compassion, the feeling that a mother has for a child. I think that's what he really brought it out.
yeah.
Why even the woman as a devi, he constantly, even the image we're looking at, it's the man offering a flower to the literally the goddess, the devi.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
Yes.
so he elevated the woman to the level of a devi.
But this was done
Yeah.
on his 50th wedding anniversary. It was an offering to to Indra, actually.
Yes. So the 50th wedding anniversary. Yes.
That's a nice one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he also a lot of triggers from his surroundings. 50th wedding anniversary, he did this when our son was born here in New Jersey. He also did a beautiful one, a mother and child, and gave it to
Yeah.
us. So he took a lot of, yeah,
Talking
was
about
influenced by
painting, I'm
surroundings.
just wondering, it was where he used to tell me that Indra was the yin to his yang. I mean, she was she was a very energetic, very
Mhm.
ebullient, very vociferous person. And he tended
Right,
to be a little more subdued in that relationship. I mean,
right.
that's what he said it to me. So perhaps you can shed some light. I think that reflected in his other paintings besides this one.
Yes, it did. They were very different. My mom and dad, they were very different personalities, but complementing. And I think it's not too different from what you see in some other marriages, which last a long time. There's conflict, there is compromise, there's commitment. And I think from my mother's point of view, what stressed her most was that, besides taking care of the domestic chore, she also had to manage things like the household finances, pay attention to details like that, and that would wear her out. Because my father was he had no interest to deal with any of the material matters, things like banking, finance, unless he was forced to. So it often fell upon my mother to take care of these things. Also, he was not, as you mentioned, he was not very forceful in his personality. So if there was any conflicting situations which arose with, say, the worker, contractor, or something, it's my mother who had to jump in and deal with it. And I think in the long run, my father did realize the important role she played. And, she gave her credit for paying attention to all the small details, which
Yes,
allowed him to focus on his art and his, writing. And
But Archana, that he acknowledged right from the beginning. Maybe he didn't admit it to her and to you all, but to us, he always acknowledged that bit of her. That without her, I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah.
But he always tried to hide away from conflict. So if there was conflict, he'd just get silent. And on two occasions, I did ask him this because in discussions at the gallery, this would happen. And then you just see silent Badri brooding whilst everyone else was talking. And I'd observed this and I once asked him. And he says, look, he has a different perspective. I have a different perspective.
Yeah.
We did debate it a bit, but after a point, I realized he's free to his opinion and I'm free to mine.
Yeah.
So
right.
Way to look at things, which could be frustrating for others more than for himself.
Right.
He's comfortable with himself.
Right.
Yeah.
And also the other thing is my mother also had a very strong, keen eye for art. She had a strong aesthetic sense too. The way she kept the house, interior decor, the love for music, all that. So that way there was a lot of, that was a big similarity, and there was a good interplay that way between their strengths too.
She was also an artist, right? She was a singer.
She was a singer on All India Radio.
Yes.
She had studied music, a vocal artist, So,
A lot of complementarities, but also.
It's 9 o'clock.
Yes.
Oh, sure. Sure, yeah.
The dramatic tension in his work to a great extent.
Yeah.
He made his work.
I guess everybody needs some sort of inspiration. So,
and I think sort of this dramatic attention also helps produce great work.
yeah.
What about his relationship with Hebbar? He regarded Hebbar as his mentor and
Yes, he had a very close relationship with eminent artist Hebbar. In fact, Hebbar uncle, Hebbar Ajja, he was the one who introduced my mother and him. They became played like a matchmaker, introduced them, and I think Hebbar Ajja was very impressed
yeah.
with my father's very natural artistic talent, which he didn't go to school and that was very natural talent. I think that's what impressed him a lot. And I remember in childhood, we went to their house quite a bit in Kalanagar in Bandra.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he would go up, and we would all go up to his studio, to the Hebbar studio upstairs, and my father and he would have long conversations. Hebbar uncle would show his paintings, what he was working on. So I think those conversations definitely inspired. He learned a lot from it, and I'm
Both
sure.
of a
Yeah.
kind, right? I mean, they both had a deep respect for Gandhi's philosophy.
Yes.
Yeah.
For Gandhian values, for Gandhi, yes, and I think, they both did. But the paintings, Gandhian paintings, were both had that as a theme, and I think also what was my father had not traveled the world. Mostly he learned through books and through discussions like these, and whereas Hebbar Ajja was very well, he had been educated through, elsewhere abroad, and so I think helped these global influences probably seep through these conversations. I think. And also, I think I see the importance of the line, which is the importance, the strength of the line I see in both their sketches.
Yeah.
I think that was an influence,
But
which
there were
definitely
also some
came.
differences in their styles, right? If you could sort of go into that between Hebbar and Badri.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
not so much of an
completely
art.
different.
Yeah, Pundo, Mr. Dadiba might have. Yeah.
No, they were completely different as artists. I think both took
Yeah,
different approaches. I think with Heber being trained at art school, he imbibed sort of
right.
academic training at art school, whilst Badri was fortunate not to have. So he could develop the way he wanted. And he
Yeah.
clearly chose this sort of Indian method of painting, which was flat, two-dimensional paper, because all Indian painting traditionally was always on paper. So he then made that his conscious decision to work in that way. Unfortunately, Heber, having been trained, it's very difficult to unlearn what you've learned.
Yeah.
So you continue from there. As you know, several great artists have said, I wish I'd never gone to art school, because to unlearn all that I've learned will take me my lifetime. So by the time I become a painter, I'll be gone. So Heber was also, as many other painters, with academic training, you continue, you pursue that path, while Badri pursued a path very much his own. So you
And
see a
Dadiba
distinct difference in approach.
sorry, Dadiba also his Badri's relationship with the other artists like M.F. Hussain and Souza. He used to interact in fact, in your gallery, right? He used
Oh,
to.
yes, but you have to realize that in the 40s and 50s, the art movement was virtually, I mean, there were a handful of people. Forget the patrons, but even in terms of artists, as practicing artists, there were just a handful. And Badri being one of them, it was a very close-knit kind of society amongst them, each supporting the other. Yes, there were differences and there were different groups that formed, like the Progressive Artist Group. They clearly had an agenda and they saw themselves distinctly different from others. But then you had the Bombay Group, which was people like Heber, Bendre, Chowda, I forget who else. There were about 5, 6 of them who formed the Bombay Group, but again, didn't sustain, because I think they all knew what they were doing, but they didn't have a common cause that they were fighting against, like the Progressive Artist Group trying to fight British academic painting, or even the sort of early Bengal school, which was sort of they fought too romantic. So these kind of things. So yes, there were differences, and yet there was great camaraderie. They were all great friends together. Gradually over the years, each took their own path. Several of them went abroad. So maybe the friendship wasn't that strong, but they all knew each other. Each respected the other for whatever they were. In fact, I remember Sabawala being a big fan of Badri's. Also, because he'd come to every exhibition of his, because, oh, my old friend Badri is showing.
Right.
It was
So I remember these kind of memories.
International School. He told
Sorry?
me.
Yeah, he got him the job.
I
And
think
in
Sabawala
fact, he
told
not
me
got
that
him the job, but he suggested to Badri that why don't you become a teacher? And there is this opening at the Bombay International. And Badri took it up. And I think I know so many students of his at Bombay International said, I
Right.
hated school, but the only class I looked forward to was art.
Yes.
Wow.
And
Wow.
at one of his openings, one of his little students, ex-students came over, not little by then, grown up. And after he left, he told me this was a very naughty boy. He came to, first he came into my class, he refused to listen to me. So he said,
Yes,
I
and
used psychology with him. I played exactly the opposite. I told him, no, I don't want you to paint. I don't want you to do anything. Please don't do anything. And gradually he grew to love the class.
Yeah.
and the good thing, and a lot of these students of his, they kept in touch with him over the years, and they got back and contacted him. They spoke to him. They were, shared
They
memories of the
started
school.
acquiring his work. Yeah.
And this, yes, they also collected, became his,
Yeah.
or his works. So
He had a big fan following.
yeah, he had a big fan following.
So
Yeah,
did he
definitely.
teach you and Monisha art? And I mean, did you witness his, his role as a teacher? Why he was so popular?
I think more like for teaching for him was not something you sit down and instruct. He had more it's like a free flowing thing. Give the child a piece of paper and pencils, colored pencils or whatever, watercolors, and so that's what he did with us too. As I said, we did not really about art and things like that, but just kind of from observation. Yeah, that's a very good picture. That's of my sister Monisha. She's sitting down and watching as
That's
he's
an early oil.
painting the.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an oil painting. That was from his very, very early days.
Looks like a Ganesha.
Yes.
Oh, yes. And
Yeah, looks like
the
the making of a Ganesha. Yeah.
making of the Ganesha, the beginning. And he actually, the oil paintings, he stopped doing them after, I think after the 60s.
Who's the
Because,
cause of that? Who's the cause of that?
Yeah.
I'm coming.
Let's get into that.
I'm told I'm the cause of it. I think I used to get I used to get tonsillitis, whatever, sore throat, and some allergic reactions in childhood, and it was linked. I think the pediatrician. Let's blame it on the pediatrician. Yeah, he
Turpentine, which
said there
was
was
causing the irritant to you.
yeah, I think it was a turpentine, which is used as a solvent in the paintings. It said that could have been causing, and so my father gave up oil paintings, and then which I think was it. I think that was a loss to the art world. I would have. The magnificent oils which I've seen. I see pictures of it.
Yeah,
everywhere.
that's true.
But he moved on to another medium. Yeah, which is watercolors.
Yeah, which is a testament to his skill as an artisan too, I think, because those two mediums are so hugely different.
Yeah.
And to kind of sort of unlearn whatever he was doing in oil and then to do it in watercolor. It's we look at his art and the beauty and the colors, but I also think of that as as an artisan, the skill that he showed in adapting and making watercolor is also so successful for him. That is something I really admire in him. So Dadiba, you had
No, but did he ever discuss this with you? Working in both the mediums?
No, he did discuss that with me. In fact, when I asked him about this, do you regret, having given up oils? He says, no, not at all, because he says, watercolors compared to oils, watercolor is a very unforgiving medium. And he said, and he was a person who could take on any challenge and turn it into a strength. This has been his life. I think whether it was, the constraint of space or, his Parkinson's syndrome, which came at the end of his life, or anything that, or any other dissonance that crept into his life, he turned it into a strength. And he says, watercolors actually, he made it a unique, USP of his art.
Right.
So sort of made it his benchmark and his, perhaps Dadiba, did he discuss it with you? Because this is what.
No, not extensively. He told me that this was the reason why he gave it up. But by the time I got to know him in the 80s, he was already established as a painter who worked mainly on paper.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really up for discussion.
Mm.
But you have to realize the time when he gave it up in the 60s, we Indian collectors looked down on work on paper because, the British had taught us oil on canvas. We thought that was the only medium as painting, if you refer to it. So he took it up at a very challenging time. That's what I think is more significant than anything else.
Right,
And then
Right.
pursued it till he could make it his strength.
right.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it also shows his versatility because he has
Yeah.
worked in
Ceramics
different
also.
forms of art, whether it is
Yes.
murals, whether it is mosaics, woodcuts. And so watercolors is another aspect of it. And he was extremely versatile. It was like a genius, of having worked in so many different mediums and writing, storytelling. It's amazing how much he packed in his life.
And his ceramic tiles, of course, and the
Oh, yeah,
plates.
tiles. Yes.
Man and woman ceramic tile. And there's one in the background where I'm sitting. I have a ceramic
Ah,
of a bird. So,
yeah.
Yes. Bird, his Ganpati tiles, and they were popular.
I think there was one image earlier on also. Was that on tiles? The black and white?
Yeah, the man and woman. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that was a very old one, and which was in our house in Chembur, and now it's I think, in our house in Bangalore.
That's the
remember.
one. That's the one. Yeah.
that, did you know that?
Yes, that was that was from his very yes.
Mulkraj
That's a
Anand
mag-
wanted to buy it and he refused to sell it because it had a lot
Okay.
of value for him. It's a bit, I mean, he saw it. It's called Man and Woman.
Right.
Right.
That it also, it was precious to him because it also represented his relationship. Indira, I think.
Right. Yes, it was one of his very early ones. Yeah, I wish I could have seen when later when I was young, after I grew up, wish to see more of his mosaic, things like mosaic styles, because then after the studio closed, Vitram Examo studio, he focused more on the watercolors. So I really didn't get much to see him.
Yeah, but what's very interesting is the application of color here in this
Yeah.
painting is very much like a mosaic. It's little pieces cut out and put in, set in
Right.
the background. So that approach of the mosaic has even come into the way he's worked on these styles.
No,
Yeah.
he also was commissioned to do, work on the wall of the Truth is God Pavilion at Gandhi Darshan in Delhi.
Okay.
And he did that. I mean, he was along with KG Subramanian and all of them. He was also asked by Charles Correa, in fact, who designed it. He was asked to do that. And and it's amazing the way he used, the way he picturized. He's told me he was very hard put trying to visualize, trying to know what to do with a concept like God is truth, because he didn't want to depict it in a human form or any. So what he
Literal
did,
manner.
he just took the words of the Upanishads, Tattvam Asi and he just sort of put it, you use the words as graphics. Then he showed fishes and sun and moon and, various living forms as a depiction of what he saw as godliness and truth. And
I think you have a little bit of it in the book, in your book. Yes, you have a picture of it. Yes, in the.
Though I must say it's a very faded replica because the place is in very bad shape and
It's not been well kept, right? Well maintained.
And no one has bothered about it, so I couldn't get a very clear picture.
Oh, this is an illustration of the Ramayana, I think. Yeah.
Another thing that he did, which was very unique, which was illustrating books at a time when most artists were not very keen on illustrating.
Yes. Yeah, I think Lakshmi ji and him, they work together.
Yes.
Right?
Lakshmi Lal.
Yeah.
There were 3 books they did. The
Mahabharata,
Mahabharata,
Ramayana.
and Worship of Shiva.
Correct.
Right.
Which I think Orient Longman had published.
And he told me, Mahabharata was much praised by Hussein. He really liked it. He depicted the Mahabharata, because again, you see the fishes, the birds, and, you know, all his
Yeah.
predilections came into the work, you know.
Yes. So yeah, I do see the birds and the water and the fish. I remember discussions with him on the birds, and he said, because I was so naive about paintings, and so I would ask him really very basic questions, and, you know, in terms of trying to understand and appreciate art. And he said everyone has a language in art, and they use certain symbols to convey meanings. And so when I was noticing the two birds, he said they are the observer and the observed. So he would use that from the Indian spirituality, that meaning of observer and observed is what he would represent the two birds for. And the unicorn was the symbol of purity for him. Water he would use as a symbol for time, passage of time. So even I started appreciating things better and understanding his art a little better once I started understanding the language that he was using. So that was very interesting.
Yes, and that Surya, the sun, was again a very prominent theme in his styles. And yeah, I love the way he depicted the sun with the face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once in a while, when Archana sits with Divya, I see Archana also drawing some of the suns
yeah.
like this. Yeah,
Yes.
the one with the mustache. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And with the eyes like that. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about his illustrations is he didn't, he didn't directly, he was given the freedom also to depict it exactly as he chose. So he was saying, in fact, he felt that at first when he got this assignment, he was really daunted. And he said he felt like Matisse did when he was asked to paint on the walls of the Vons Chapel in France. Just felt it was a very epiphanic kind of exercise that he had to do. So he took it upon himself to try and, put his heart and soul into it and, do something that, as Lakshmi Lal herself says about his illustrations for the Ramayana, she says he extended the text. It didn't just replicate the text, it extended it into a new dimension.
Yeah.
That's a very
Again, those illustrations remind me something about what he would speak. He when he went back to paper and watercolors, and what he said was, I am going back to what used to be the Indian way. It used to be called Chitra Lekhani, where lines and colors were used to depict things.
To tell stories.
Yeah, and so it really brought the Indian ethos back very much so into his painting.
Yeah.
This particular one I remember, the one with, this is an amazing one. I think he did it here when they were going to leave the US, going back to India. Yeah, and this still brings out strong emotions in me, because I still see the sadness, rather a detached sadness in the elderly couple, where they don't want to have eye contact. Lest it turn into an outpouring. So it's really beautiful, and it's
the
really,
parting. I think they call it the parting. Or
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unicorn, of course, which is a symbol of creativity and
Purity.
Purity and truth.
Yeah.
True.
So he
Yes.
contain a lot of a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings and in just one symbol.
Yes.
He's very
Yeah.
very minimalist in that sense. He's able to.
In that sense, yeah.
And it's a whole different world if you're looking into Badrinarayan painting. Very unique, with these the tonsured figures, the monks, or the face. Sometimes there's faceless humans or without the eyes. There's ethereal creatures like unicorn, angels, all that six ducks. It's a very different world. And we were lucky. I was lucky growing up how to watch the transformation from a simple line and starting with a sketch and drawing how it was transformed into magnificent work
And
of
that,
art.
that brings me to an important question. I mean, his art is being sort of valued so highly now. Why is it that, you know, when in the early days, it wasn't valued so much? Perhaps you.
Well, I don't know, as I said again, up to the 80s,
Hmm.
but even in the 80s, his prices were relatively modest. And this was something that he was also quite conscious of, because I remember once one of his, and if you'll notice, Badri had several collectors who collected his work right through their lifetime.
Hmm.
Unlike many artists that when they got older, they couldn't afford the work, and you see clearly of a period and then it stops. But in the case of Badri, he was conscious of this because somebody once made a comment at one of his exhibitions, "Oh my God, Badri, your prices are so much, I now can't buy it." And his spontaneous reaction was, "Please don't buy it, take it." I mean, with gobsmacked, that person, they didn't know how to respond to that. After that, Badri asked me in all seriousness, "Are my prices high? I don't want anyone to feel that they can't buy it." So it was also conscious this way. He said, "I'd rather more people have my work than I get more money." That was his kind of approach to it. I don't know whether he imbibed this from Jamini Roy, who also had the same philosophy that make it affordable for every Bengali home should have a work of art.
Right.
And he wanted to
Yeah.
make it that affordable. So Badri may have imbibed something from that, because he says it's nice if my paintings go to people's homes. So,
Absolutely.
so maybe that was also one of the reasons.
Yes, and yeah, to add to that, yeah, he was really not involved in the material. He was not, I should say, a detached outlook. He did not have so much as a disdain like for material success. It really didn't matter to him how what his painting sold for, or as long as he was able to provide, for a decent living for the household. He did not concern himself with what the prices at which his work sold or negotiate. He happily left that
He had
job
no great
to.
desire, yeah.
Yeah,
He had no
great
desire
desire.
to amass wealth.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think he would have looked at it would corrupt him, even had he. That would
Yeah.
have been his
Yeah.
approach.
Yes. I think he
And-
wanted the freedom of, producing whatever he wanted to produce without the pressures of the price or the market or whether it sells, doesn't sell. From that standpoint, I think he was very comfortable, just doing his work and let Dadiba take care of it.
Right.
True. Very true.
And but yeah, he did.
Probably also his faith, you know. I mean, he had a deep respect for affinity towards Buddhism, which talks of self-abnegation, and that probably kept him going even when, things were not that hunky-dory on the
Right.
Yeah, that's
He,
true.
he yeah, so he did have he did appreciate small comforts though, like traveling in a taxi, or eating out, going to movies and things like that. And he did
Yeah.
spend later when he became more commercially a little when his paintings sold a little better. He spent the money quite generously. So that way his there's
And
another
he shared it with everyone.
Yeah.
yes,
It wasn't that he spent money only on himself. He shared it with everyone around him.
yes,
Mm, mm.
yes.
And I know he would spend a lot on books. He
Right.
never
Oh, yeah.
flinched away from spending on books, whether they were very expensive international editions on art or anything like that. He would just spend. He didn't. It didn't matter to him because that was a source of knowledge,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it. Yeah, he was. So wherever it was essential, he would just not hold back at all. No, no.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think it's fitting that a book has been printed on him and not just, it's
Yeah.
not just a digital version. We've actually now printed the book.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, yes.
Yes. Yeah, I'm very glad this book has seen the light of day after, a number of
many years.
years. It was revived. Yeah, the project. Thanks
Yeah.
to Mark.
Here now.
Yeah,
And-
thanks to
And
Rizio.
Prema,
Yeah.
who wrote this text,
He's
I
here
don't know
in
how many
spirit.
years ago, and then I had to revisit it.
Mhm.
And Archana, what was your dad's early years like in Sikandrabad? Has he said anything about it to you all?
Not much, but I think, early years were, he lost his mother at an very early age, and I think then the older brother, had to take over I think his father was not around a lot of the time. He was kind of traveling or so not. It was not a very stable kind of childhood. So I think his brother played a huge role working and taking care of the rest of the family, and
And he had
so
a
it was a
younger
very
brother as well. Didn't he
yeah.
have a
He
younger
had
brother as well?
he had three other brothers. They were a huge. They were yes. So and I
And
think he would
Acharya was
go.
his elder brother, am I right?
Ramakrishna.
Yes, Ramakrishna. Yeah, and
He always
yeah.
acknowledged him as.
Yeah.
And I don't know
Yes.
if you read the story, The Silver Tray. Have you read that story of his, The Silver Tray? I think it's been
Silver-
published somewhere.
Talks of his brother,
Okay.
Silver Tray.
two sons.
It's a story which left a huge impression on me. And it's kind
Okay.
of autobiographical. He says that the situation actually happened in his life, but of course he must have taken certain liberties in writing it. Where
Yeah.
mother sends her two sons, little kids, to sell a silver tray to a nobleman because there's no money in the house. And there's no money for these boys to go by bus. It's a long ride. So the two boys set off on foot. And how they finally, I won't say the whole story, but the kind of little pranks that they play along the way, just to feed themselves a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lovely written story. And I said, where did all these ideas come from? And he says, no, this is autobiographical. Then it struck me that what a hard time he must have had,
Yeah.
which he never really spoke about or complained about or nothing.
Yeah, I mentioned
No.
in the book actually.
never-
I explained, so I won't reveal how it ended and what. But what's amazing about the story is that in very economically, just a few words, he actually painted a picture of what the economic landscape of India was at that time. Divide between the haves and the have-nots, and it's so
Right.
done. So he had so many facets to him as a writer, as a poet. Write poetry to woo your mother, in fact. He said,
Oh, that also.
Oh, I did not know that. Yeah.
the poet.
I know he would always bring very fragrant, like the jasmine, the mogra, when he was wooing her. That I know. So but I didn't know about the
He was an
poetry.
excellent storyteller. Excellent storyteller.
Yeah.
I would really love listening to his stories, and he would make different sounds to recreate the scene.
Yes.
And there was always a punchline, and the way he delivers it, that was just really nice because unexpected. He would choose and really some old stories he would pick up, from Indian mythology.
Right.
And they would become modern in the sense when he was recreating them. I think it also shows in his art. It's all storytelling.
Yes.
And
It's
Ravi,
really
you must
beautiful.
have seen Ancient Tale for Modern Man,
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. We
which
have
is
that. Yes.
exactly what you said just now.
Yeah.
He used mythology, storytelling, even in his teaching, because the students were telling me how he would, tell them stories. Then he would tell them to, recreate whatever they imbibed from the story on a piece of paper. So they would paint whatever came to them, so it would be all different paintings. Instead of just one and asking them to copy that, he let them imagination.
Yeah, that's an excellent one. Yeah. Otherwise,
Yes.
most of the art classes they show you, a scene or a dog or an animal, then they want you to paint that. Yeah,
Right.
this was amazing.
And
Yeah.
how was Badrinaran the grandfather? Now, just one sec. The work which is on our screen is when he's going to America or when he's just arrived.
Okay.
For him,
Yeah.
this one journey was such a big. For him, it was like it bothered him a lot. So
Yeah,
it's
but
virtually, will I come back? I'm taking all my belongings and I'm leaving on this nature journey with Garud sort of guiding me along.
yeah, but thanks to Amma and her will to come here, and because of that, it's really thanks to Amma that he was able to come here and really enjoy his visit here. Even going to museums here,
Yes.
he was like,
In New York.
this is really overwhelming. I have seen all these paintings in my mind through all the books, and to really see them live, he's saying it's just too overwhelming, too many colors coming at me.
Yes.
He in some sense couldn't take it. It was
Yeah.
affecting him so much emotionally.
And when he
Yeah.
saw those Picassos and those Van Goghs and the Dalí and all in the museums in New York, he became very emotional, but he was also very grateful, the gratitude that he got to see these.
Yeah, I got a chance to see them actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was he like as a granddad?
Okay.
As granddad, I'm sure that his first granddaughter was Akshata. I think they had a great interaction with each other. And my kids, son Manas and daughter Divya, they also, whenever we, visited India, when he was around, we went to Chembur, went to Bangalore, spent time with him. Yeah.
That's
you would
Akshata
engage
and
with them?
Manas. Yeah.
Yes, Manas and Divya. Yeah.
No, that's Akshata and Manas. Yeah.
No, this is Akshata and Akshata
On the
to the left
picture,
and my son Manas to the right. Yeah, this was in Chembur.
So
I've seen
kind of
Akshata
depicts
also
him having,
doodling. I've seen her sketching.
yeah. So this is a bit like him having told them a story, and they're both thinking, now what should we do?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful conversation, but I think we need to open it up for questions. I'd just like to end the conversation. If you can go to the last slide, please, Asta. I think, I would like to end this conversation by quoting something that Badri told me when he was stricken with Parkinson's syndrome. He said he was, typical of him, he said he was grateful to God for sparing his hands because only the rest of his body got affected, but his hands he could still paint. And it was, and his faith in God and humankind, remained undimmed until the end of his life. And I think this kind of optimism, it's also reflected in the Truth for God Pavilion, where he talks of Asatoma, Sadgamaya, Jyotirma, Sadgamaya. Those are the words he used on the panel. And again, lead me from darkness into light. So the light, was a very important symbol for him, whether it was the sun or whether it was light from a lamp or whatever. He was not daunted by any sort of, any challenge, any darkness, any foreboding. He just plowed on, with his optimism, his faith, and his faith in God as well as humanity. And I think his wish in these uncertain times would be that the light of knowledge and self-awareness guide all of us in our paths ahead. So I'll just pass the mic on to Anjana now. She can take any questions.
Thank you, Prema, and everyone. It was a lovely conversation. There are quite a few questions. Also, I'd like to say people have jotted down their memories in the chat box of Badri, which is quite special. So I'll start with the questions and I'll then get to the memories. So Pamela Philippos of Times of India says that Badri was a regular visitor at Times of India, and his work often made it on the front pages of the Sunday Times. She says she's delighted to learn about his multicultural and syncretic interests. And she asks if this was worldview that was essential to his genius. If any of you could take that up, actually. About multicultural interests. Yeah, multicultural interests. Like he had quite democratic instincts and a lifestyle, and what part of that contributed was essential to his genius.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Archana.
No, I was just saying because I think he saw the universal in all different religions. I don't know if that answers that. And I think his approach, but I think was not so much religious, it was more spiritual. Looking at, he had a spiritual aesthetic, and that kind of made it more democratic. I think Ravi, we were also discussing that, right, earlier?
Yeah, that naturally made it democratic. Yes, definitely, because he was more philosophical and more spiritual in nature. And the significance of sacrifice was important in him. And this is something that then he saw, whether it be Jesus Christ, whether it be Buddha, or whether it be Rama. All these are characters or people who sacrificed. And I think that's the thread that I see from from knowing him, from his nature and from his work. That's the one that I would say is what shows the universal and democratic nature.
Rohit Chowdhury asks,
If I could just add one more comment.
yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think you made a very valid point about spirituality. In fact, spirituality was something that was, the driving force in his paintings. I mean, but spirituality not, used as a vehicle to express his, um, portrayal of conflict, of resolution, of creativity. So they became symbols. Anything that was spiritual or religious became a symbol in his hands to depict something that was much larger. And even Sufism, he was very drawn to Sufi texts also.
Yeah.
And in fact, the whole
Yes.
concept of teaching was imbibed from the Sufi relationship between, Murshid and Murid.
Mm.
The very non-hierarchical relationship between a teacher in Sufi tradition, between the teacher.
Mm.
I think that was
Mm.
very, very important to him. And even in his art, he says that, there was a time when he used to paint very somber colors. And then a child told him, why don't you use brighter colors? I think it'll look better. And he actually took that seriously. And, his love of children, his
Yeah.
of child art, his elevation of child art to a place of all this was imbibed also from Sufi traditions that he studied, contemplated, and studied very deeply. So there was
Right.
nothing that was beyond his ken, as far as
Yeah.
non-hierarchical, whether it was a child and child and adult, man or woman, and even all living beings, whether it was the bird or the tree or, I mean, everything was a personality in its own right.
Right.
Yes.
The child thing reminds me also of his paintings that he would give away to Cry. And the beautiful cards that they had made, Cry as an organization, they were really wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you can go on.
Yeah. So I think this came up during your conversation, but there's a question about how he decided to explore tile painting, which seemed to have a different use of his technique. So the why and how of it.
The painting on tiles, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Ceramic?
Why explored
Um,
tile painting? Yeah.
So please,
Right.
a little bit about that. I don't know. It's
Probably Archana, when she comes back, she may have a better view on it. All I knew from conversations, either within the family, was there was a time when uh, either uh, whether his art was working or not, he was interested in exploring different mediums. And this is where I don't know how he got to know this Hexamar studio or the Vitram studio, but that's where he started exploring the tiles and even plates on which he would, paint these wonderful things. And that's about all I know. Maybe Archana has a better idea.
I'm sorry,
when she gets-
I'm sorry, I missed the question. I had to just step
Of course,
away. Yeah.
Rohit has asked, why did Badri decide to explore tile painting?
Tile painting?
Yeah.
I
You
don't know
recall
really.
it?
I think it had to
I
do with.
remember right.
Yeah.
The studio was looking to invite artists to work on ceramics.
Ah,
And Badri was one of the few early ones. There were several others, but none of them pursued it as long as Badri did. Badri, he took to the medium because what fascinated him most was how a glaze is transparent or looks a completely different color. And then depending on what temperature you fire it at, you can achieve a completely different result. And it also lended itself to a little bit of accident because sometimes, you could have a change of 20 degrees or 50 degrees and the color would change. And it was that childlike wonder which fascinated him to it. And also, when he first started selling these tiles, he used to sell them at 10 rupees each. And he was moderately successful. And then when he was advised to make it 100 rupees each, he sold a lot more because you relate things Sadly, we look at everything in terms of value. And if there's more value to it, obviously it's better. Sadly, that's the truth.
Right.
And that kept him going for several years. So he had this little box he had made by a carpenter
Yes.
where he could slide his tiles in. So he
Yes,
would put
yes.
them at home or school and then slide them into this box and then take them to fire the next day.
Yes, I think it had about 20, 25 tiles or whatever, few tiles. Yes, I
Yeah,
remember.
with a little handle at the top, a vertical box.
Yeah.
And then Foyne was telling me that he used to lug these sackfuls of, or boxfuls of tiles, and then he had no space at home. So he used to
Right.
use some of them for his home on Malabar Hill, and then trudge home. But unfortunately, Vitram Studio closed down, so he had to give up that.
Then he stopped that practice. Yeah. Then he had a little kiln. He used to use a kiln on Meadow Street. I'm not sure exactly which one, but even that slowly, it was an electric kiln, and even that slowly shut down. So I think his last tiles would have been produced sometime in the mid 80s. After that, I think he stopped doing tiles.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
So there's an interesting story about the tiles. When they were leaving the Chembur home, there was a person who came to take away all the old things and things that they didn't need. But this person was fairly aware of what the tile was worth. They broke and they took the tile from the kitchen or some area. That is very interesting.
That's probably the one which they had in the kitchen cabinet. There was a sort of
the kabaddi guy. Yeah.
So he kind of kept the tiles intact,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I remember. Yeah.
Shall I move to the next question? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So this one's for Prema. Meru asks, what made you want to share Badri with us in a book? So,
well, actually, it was Marg which had commissioned me to do the book. So full credit to Marg. But, at that time, I was actually doing a full-time job in Singapore, which was far removed from the world of art. It was to do with price reporting, markets, and so on. So at first, I was a bit intimidated whether I could handle that, a project like this. Badri used to drop in, as Pamela mentioned, he used to drop in at Times of India, and he was a very dear figure and a very familiar figure from the 80s. So he was somebody whom all of us had a great deal of fondness for. So I immediately jumped at the idea, but at first I was wondering whether I could handle it or not. And then fortunately, Marg as well as Pandol's Dadiba had great faith in me. So I said, okay, I had left the world of art behind, but I plunged into it again. And every time I'd come back to Bangalore to visit my mother, I'd also go and visit Badri. And it was fascinating. What actually, I found most interesting is that, here was an artist who was, who had a very layered sensibility. It was very distinct, very unique, very different from others of his time. There was the progressive artists and the Bombay group, as Dadiba mentioned, but his was a very unique vision. And he did what was not fashionable at that time. He actually trod an untrodden path, so to speak. He used myths, he used, his imagination, he used poetry, literature, everything that he came across transformed into a symbol in his work of art. So I found that very fascinating. And it was, and also the fact that he was a teacher, he was so multifaceted. He was a teacher, he was an artist, he was an illustrator, he was a writer, and he was a poet. So, to find all these facets in a single person was quite fascinating for me. And also, I must say, his non-hierarchical worldview, his, his respect for all living beings, all this struck a chord in me. So I was very happy to undertake this endeavor.
right.
Thank you.
And thank you, Prema. Yeah.
Thank you for, Thank
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Prema.
The book has come out wonderfully.
Fine.
So the next question is from Mehru Kotwal. Where did he get his strength, inspiration, jollies from, teaching or painting?
Could you repeat that?
Where did he get his strength and inspiration from, teaching or painting?
I think it was a combination of life,
Yeah.
of several factors, but living life that sort of led to all this, and that experience of life, because that, how do you evolve as a person? It's those experiences which make you evolve. So I think he imbibed things from wherever he could, and it was a natural progression.
Yeah. Yeah, even I agree with that. I think it's both and teaching, working with, especially teaching children, I think definitely inspired. He loved to be around children. And I think that definitely, inspired him, and vice versa. And painting influenced his teaching, and teaching influenced his,
No,
there's a great interaction between the two, I think. Yeah.
The next question asks, what makes the Badri Ganesha so special, in your view?
I think the critic Prema should answer that.
Yeah, art critic.
Again, I mean, for him, Ganesha was also a symbol, a symbol of striving, of, he's the god of, overcoming obstacles. And Badri, it had a perfect sync with Badri's own philosophy of, facing up to challenges with equanimity, a very Buddhist, sensibility of equanimity and courage. These were very important aspects in his thinking. And I think Ganesha symbolized that. And also, Ganesha, as we know, I mean, he was, when you read stories about Ganesha, he had wit. Wit is another aspect that I think attracted.
Right.
So the combination of wit, the smartness to overcome his deficiencies or his challenges, and the fact that he saw obstacles not as an impediment, but as something which is a pathway to divinity, a pathway to, in his own words, success. Success is a different connotation for Badri. Success was being able to fulfill your destiny or your creative impulse, in his case. That was for him success. So for him, I think Ganesha symbolized that. The ability to look at obstacles or to look at challenges as an important element in the pathway of life. That's the way he saw it.
Right. The next question asks, why did Badri move to Bangalore?
Sorry?
Why did Badri move to Bangalore? That's the next question. Yeah.
Oh, that Archana should be able to answer.
Yeah, after a long time, about 40 years in Bombay, it was, I think, he was beginning to, there were some health issues. And so then he wanted to, and my sister, Monisha, had moved to Bangalore then. So that time, and I was here in the US. So I think it was the idea of being there closer to my sister. So that's when they decided to move there, to be around there. Otherwise, yeah, it was, I don't think it was not at all easy for him to move after 40 years in Chembur and in Bombay. But ultimately, I think it took him a while to adjust again to Bangalore, to the kind of, because I think he missed meeting his friends, everybody was in Bombay whom he was associating with.
Yeah.
So yes, but finally he adjusted.
Yeah.
He loved Bombay, but I think it was the health reasons which made him shift to Bangalore. Yeah.
So we're
And
done.
I wanted to mention something earlier when I think my internet connection here was a little weak, but about the Ganpati paintings, I think also why it was unique. He did not, most of his paintings, Ganpati ones, actually all of them, I think was the side view. And, the Ganpati shown was so different with the turban, with the dhoti, with the shawl around it. I think his depictions really unique. That's what really stood out, and people loved it.
Yeah, he always called doing Ganpatis as his riyaz for his other work. Yeah.
So we are done with questions, but like I said, there are some memories and personal bits here. So I'll read them out and you all can comment, of course. Lakshmi Reddy says, my father, Mr. P.T. Reddy, Shri K.K. Hebbar and Shri Badri Narayan ji were friends. When in Hyderabad, he would visit us. So I think this
Okay.
is up, yeah, in the conversation. Then this is one of his students, Aarti. She says, I'm a Bombay International alumnus from the 80s. And this has
Yeah.
brought back so many memories of Badri sir's art class. He would arrive in the classroom with a noticeable presence, give us paper and crayons, and start telling us a story. We had to draw what we imagined as he narrated. Best part of the school week. I own his tiles. If I remember correctly, we did a mosaic at school, Gilbert Building in Babul Nath, but I could be wrong. I vaguely remember that. Thank you for this trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
Another one of his students, Yashwanti, she says, again, she was blessed to have been educated by Badri. He was a magnificent storyteller as he was an artist. His chalk would fly over the blackboard as the words wove magic. Thank you for an illuminating discussion. Again, a student, so quite a lot of students here.
Oh, wow.
That's really heartwarming. Yeah, very nice.
So she says, my father used to teach him BIS and was close to Mr. Badri Narayan due to his interest in art and also because my mother is from Hyderabad. I also studied at BIS and have memories of meeting Mr. Badri Narayan during mid-70s. We have a few of his styles paintings which are treasured. So, and I think I've covered, yeah. So if you have any closing comments or anything that you would want to.
No, the Times of India thing reminded me of the speaking tree. That column,
Column. Yeah.
that one was pretty. He was pretty involved with that, I think, and he had written some really wonderful pieces in the speaking tree.
No, I think we
Yes.
all forgot P.T. Reddy because he was one of the most prominent, earliest painters from Hyderabad. And he came from Hyderabad. In fact, we were talking of all these groups, but the first group to form in Bombay were the Young Turks, which was a group that set up, I think, sometime in the early 40s, where P.T. Reddy played a big role in that. There was P.T. Reddy, Majid, I forget the other names, but they were all young students from the JJ who called themselves the Young Turks.
There's one more question. So again, a student, she says a recurring theme in the stories he would narrate were a balloon seller, a magician, a king, and a queen. Now that I look back, I was wondering, what did the magician symbolize?
Did she say in the stories he told or not in his painting? In the
The
stories?
stories, yeah, not the paintings, yeah.
Magician. Huh.
I think it would be the wonder.
Yeah.
Must be, yeah. That's a good
The
interpretation of that.
magician
Yeah.
sort of, and for a child, it sort of conjures many images in the mind.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
of a magician, and life is magic in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's probably, yeah, as you
There's some network issue with Archana.
Yeah.
Anyway, it lasted this while. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
okay now.
sorry, I seem to be having some internet issues here. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Talk. Yeah, if you'd like.
Look, we in India are doing better than you guys in the US with the internet. I'm surprised.
It looks like it, yes.
Yeah.
I'm getting a thing that the host has stopped my video. I think I've been.
Yeah, you can now enable the video.
I can enable. It says it stopped again. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, it's fine. We've, I think, almost reached the end of the.
Yeah.
We can hear you, so good enough.
Yeah.
So I think we'll close the conversation for now, and then if there are any other comments, we'll of course write to whoever's asked us queries, etc. So we hope you really enjoyed this conversation. It has been live streamed on Facebook, and the recording will be made available on YouTube as well. Our channel is called the Marg Foundation. Do subscribe to it and follow us on social media. Like we said, the Badri Narayan book is now available in both digital as well as print editions on the website. It is now shipping worldwide, and the new format makes it a much affordable book. So we hope you pick up this beautiful book into which so much effort has gone in. And at this time, I would also like to remind that Marg is entering its 75th year this month. And we have reconceptualized the magazine to sort of address the cultural issues that are relevant to our times. We hope you will walk with us on this new path and subscribe to the magazine. The links to both the Badri book and the subscription are in the chat box for those interested. Lastly, I would like to thank our wonderful speakers and the audience for such a great conversation. And like we said, a walk down memory lane. So thank you all of you. And another reminder that our next webinar is on November 18th with economic thinker Kaushik Basu and Gandhian and social activist Ilaben Bhatt. So we hope we can see you there. So with this, I think I'll say a good evening and have a nice good night. Yeah.
I just want to say one more thing. I would like to really thank Marg and Dadiba and Prema for coming up with this wonderful book and the initiative. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I want to
think
also
the credit
echo
should
that.
be shared by Marg and Prema. That's where it should end.
I want to echo the thanks too, and thank you for inviting me to this and taking the trip down memory lane and trying to show a little bit of the personal.
Yeah, I'd like to also
Yeah.
chip in and say that, besides everybody on this panel who has done such a great job with this conversation today and the audience, a huge thank you to Rizio and the Marg team, without whom the book would not have been possible. Of course, Dadiba and his wife Khurshid has also played a big role in, seeing this book through. But I've already acknowledged that, but we cannot sort of underestimate the role that Rizio has played in giving a new incarnation to this book, because it's become it took on a totally different form last year when she sort of conceived it as the first in a series of redefining, reimagining the Indian modern, which was a totally different concept and which gave me a totally new perspective on the artist. So a big thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Rizio.
And
Thank
the
you,
Yeah, thank
Anjana
you,
and
Rizio.
Chetan.
Thank you, Marg, and Anjana and Chetan. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, Anjana and Chetan, thank you so much. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. Good night, everyone.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And good morning.
Good night. Good
Yeah, yeah.
I keep forgetting this. Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
I can have a cup of coffee. Yes.
Yeah.
Good day, good evening, wherever everybody is. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye.
Yep.
Bye bye.
Bye.